After a freak storm floods Keanu Reeves' home, he heads into the submerged basement expecting ruined furniture, but instead discovers a hidden chamber overflowing with gold, relics, and deadly creatures guarding them. As he fights his way through the water and the danger, he uncovers a secret tied to his family's past that turns his entire life story upside down. That night, Keanu went to sleep thinking his biggest problem was the echo of old memories he still hadn't learned to quiet. By sunrise, the sound of those memories would be drowned out by rushing water and a secret that had waited decades to be found. Rain hammered the roof like a drum solo gone wrong. Lowe's Angels wasn't built for this kind of storm, and Keanu knew it. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows, feeling that familiar restlessness stretch his nerves tight. Fame had given him money, recognition, and endless noise, but nights like this still made him feel like the lonely kid who'd grown up between continents and goodbyes. A distant crack of thunder shook the house. Something clanged in the pipes. Then he heard it, an odd, heavy splash from somewhere below, like a body of water being disturbed, not a simple leak. He frowned and swung his legs out of bed. Electricity flickered once, then steadied. The digital clock on his nightstand blinked 3:11 a.m. "Great," he muttered, grabbing a hoodie from the chair. "Of course it's 3 in the morning." As he stepped into the hallway, cold air brushed his skin. The house no longer felt like his quiet refuge in the hills. It felt tilted off balance, as if something inside it had shifted while he slept. The storm's roar dimmed for a heartbeat, and in that thin silence he heard it clearly, water rushing where it shouldn't be. The staircase to the ground floor creaked under his bare feet. Halfway down, the smell hit him. Damp wood, wet earth, that sharp metallic scent of pipes under strain. When he reached the bottom, his chest tightened. The living room rug was already soaked along the edge, a thin sheet of water sliding across the hardwood floor. It wasn't deep yet, but it was creeping faster than made any sense. Outside the glass doors, the backyard looked like a gray curtain of rain. The pool had swollen to the brim, waves slapping against the tiles. "Okay," he breathed, scanning the room. Source. The sound was louder to his left, near the hallway that led to the kitchen, and beyond that, the old basement. Most houses around here didn't even have basements, but this one did. A strange, concrete underbelly from a different era, one piece of the property Keanu rarely visited. He hesitated, eyes flicking to the closed basement door at the end of the hall. His stomach knotted. That door represented more than just storage. It held boxes of his sister's things, pieces of his past, and a promise he'd once made to himself. Don't go down there unless you have to. The last time he'd spent more than a few minutes in that basement, he'd left with shaking hands and swollen eyes. Another splash echoed, louder this time, like something heavy dropping into deep water. "Have to." He moved quickly, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The house lights were still on, but years of filming disaster scenes had taught him one thing: never trust the power in a storm. As he reached for the basement door handle, his phone buzzed in his hoodie pocket. The caller ID showed Maya next door. Maya had moved in a few months back with her 8-year-old son, Luca. She was kind, always waving over the fence, always thanking him for carrying her groceries when her hands were full. She treated him like a neighbor, not a movie poster. He answered, "Hey, you okay?" "Keanu, sorry, I know it's late." Her voice shook slightly and wind howled behind her. "Our roof is leaking bad and the street's flooding. The water's already at the doorstep. My car won't start. I don't know what to." "Stay where you are," he said instantly. "I'll come get you, don't try to drive." "What about you? Is your place okay?" He glanced at the basement door as another dull splash reverberated. "Working on it. I'll be there in 5. "Keanu, you don't have to." "I know, I want to." For a moment, the storm filled the silence between them. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll wake Luca." He hung up, pulled on boots by the front door, and grabbed a raincoat and an extra umbrella from the rack. The basement could wait another 10 minutes. People came first. That was something he believed in, not because it sounded good in interviews, but because of all the times he'd wished someone had chosen him first and hadn't. When he opened the front door, the world outside felt like another planet. Rain slammed sideways, riding the wind in relentless sheets. The driveway was a shallow river, water swirling around his boots as he stepped out. He pulled his hood up, locked the door, and pushed into the storm. The street was chaos. Alarms chirping, trees bending, water racing downhill toward the city lights far below. It was only a short walk to Maya's, but every step felt like wading through a cold, insistent current. As he reached her gate, the porch light flicked on, a warm, trembling beacon in the storm. Maya stood in the doorway with Luca clinging to her side, both of them already damp from trying to shove towels under the door. The boy's eyes widened when he saw Keanu, but tonight there was no fan stutter in his expression, only plain fear. "Hey, little man," Keanu called over the storm, offering a reassuring smile. "You ready for an adventure?" Luca nodded, trying to be brave. "Is our house gonna sink?" "No," Keanu said, stepping up to them. "But my place is on slightly higher ground. You can wait this out with me." He wrapped one umbrella around Maya and Luca, kept the other for himself, and led them carefully through the rushing water. Maya's hand brushed his arm once, more for balance than anything, but there was trust in the touch, a quiet faith that he wouldn't let them fall. Back at his house, he ushered them inside, grabbed towels, and guided them to the living room. The water on the floor was higher now, lapping at the bottoms of the furniture. "Whoa," Luca breathed. "You got a swimming pool inside, too." Keanu laughed softly despite himself. "Limited-time feature, I'm not keeping it." Maya's face tightened with worry as she took in the scene. "Your place is flooding, too. Keanu, maybe we should go to a shelter. This looks serious." "It is serious," he admitted, "but the streets are getting worse by the minute. We're safer staying put for now. I'll try to stop it at the source. The main valve S in the basement." At the word basement, something flickered in his chest. An old ache, the image of cardboard boxes stacked against a concrete wall, a photo of his sister smiling from a frame that never got unpacked. He pushed the picture away, focusing on the present. "You two stay up here," he said. "If the water rises more, head to the second floor, okay? There are dry clothes in the guest room closet. Help yourselves." Maya studied his face, reading something in his eyes that he didn't say aloud. "Don't do anything stupid down there." "I'm not planning to," he replied. "Back in 10. As he turned toward the basement hall, he felt Luca's small hand grab his sleeve. "Hey, Mr. Keanu," the boy asked, voice tiny under the storm's roar. "Yeah. Are you scared?" The honest answer came out before he could dress it up. "A little." Luca's brow furrowed. "But you're John Wick, you're not supposed to be scared." Keanu crouched down so they were eye level. It hurt his knees more than he'd ever admit, but it mattered. "Movies are pretend, kiddo. Real courage isn't about never being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are okay." Luca nodded slowly, absorbing the words like they were more than just comfort. Keanu squeezed his shoulder, stood, and walked toward the door that had waited years for him. The hallway was quieter here, the sound of the storm muffled to a distant growl above his head. All he could hear clearly was the persistent rush of water below, a deep, echoing river under his feet. He paused at the basement door, fingers resting on the handle. Memories tried to climb up out of the dark. The day he'd stored the last box of his sister's belongings down there, closing the lid on her handwriting, her sketchbooks, her stubborn, bright energy. The guilt that had come from leaving her dreams in the shadows while the world celebrated his. The decision he'd made, half-conscious, to leave it all untouched, like a shrine, out of sight, but never truly out of mind. He inhaled slowly, exhaled even slower. The house was flooding. A neighbor and her kid were depending on him. There wasn't room tonight for old ghosts. He opened the door. A cold draft rushed up the staircase, carrying the smell of wet concrete and something else he couldn't place, earthy, metallic, almost ancient. The first step squelched under his boot. Water was already pooling at the bottom, reflecting the dim light from the hallway above. He clicked on the flashlight and started down. Each step took him deeper into a different world. The familiar basement, the shelves of old scripts, the boxes of worn-out guitars, the carefully taped cartons marked with years, was half submerged already. Water swirled around table legs and cardboard islands. Papers floated like pale leaves, bumping softly against paint cans and toolboxes. "Damn," he murmured, wading in up to his shins. "This is bad." He swept the flashlight beam across the room, searching for the main water valve near the far wall. The beam caught on the metal wheel, tilted at an awkward angle, still accessible if he moved fast. He took a step, then another, feeling unseen objects slide underfoot in the murky water. Something brushed his calf. He froze. It could have been a floating cable, a piece of packaging foam, anything. But the way it moved, smooth, deliberate, sent a line of ice up his spine. He angled the flashlight down. The water rippled, surface broken by pieces of debris, and then, for just a heartbeat, something else. Two small, round humps, gliding just under the surface, vanishing as quickly as they'd appeared. "Okay," he whispered, "that's new." The storm thundered above him, but down here, the sound felt distant, as if he were already underground in more ways than one. He pushed forward, jaw tight, refusing to let fear make his decisions. A few more steps. Just reach the valve, shut it off, get upstairs. The flashlight beam slid along the far wall and stopped. There behind where he remembered an old shelving unit used to stand was plain concrete. But the water had eroded something, revealing a jagged crack he'd never noticed before. Not a simple fracture from age, but a dark vertical line about the width of his palm, running from shoulder height all the way down into the water. Through the gap he could see only blackness, but the air around it felt different. Cooler. Charged. He frowned. There hadn't been any cracks when he'd moved in. No secret seams in the concrete. Yet here it was, like the house had decided to split open and show him a wound. Another sensation brushed past his leg, this time accompanied by a subtle bump against his boot. He jerked the light down again just in time to catch a sinuous motion curling away. Not a wire, not foam. It looked unmistakably like the tail end of something alive disappearing into the deeper shadow near the far corner. His heart kicked up. The rational part of his brain argued for retreat. Go back upstairs, call emergency services, let professionals deal with this. But another part of him, the older one, the one forged by years of loss and struggle, knew that sometimes life didn't send professionals. Sometimes it was just you, your choices, and the people depending on you. He swallowed, forced steady breaths, and stepped closer to the crack. Up close, it wasn't just a crack. The concrete edges were beveled in a way that didn't look accidental, almost like the outline of a door that had been sealed and painted over long ago. The water gushed from somewhere behind it, slipping through invisible gaps, feeding the indoor flood. His flashlight caught on a small metal shape, half-submerged right at the base of the seam. It looked like an old iron ring, bolted into something hidden in the dark. Keanu's fingers curled around it before he could overthink. The metal was cold and slick, but solid. He braced his feet as best he could on the slippery floor and pulled. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a low groan that vibrated through his bones, the concrete shifted a fraction of an inch. The sound was like a stone throat clearing after decades of silence. Water surged harder around his boots as the gap widened. He should turn back. He could still turn back. He pulled again. The hidden door slid open just enough for his flashlight beam to slip through. And what it revealed on the other side made him forget the storm, the flood, and even the thing moving in the water at his feet. Because beyond the broken wall, in a chamber that should not have existed beneath his home, something impossible shimmered in the darkness, spilling out a golden light that did not belong to the modern world. The light pouring through the broken wall wasn't gentle. It was sharp and alive, striping the dark water in shifting gold. Keanu stepped through the narrow opening sideways, shoulders scraping damp stone, heart beating too fast for someone who'd done this many times on movie sets, but never like this. Never with real water, real darkness, and real people upstairs depending on him. On the other side, the basement ended and something older began. The space opened into a low underground chamber, wider than his living room, its ceiling held up by thick wooden beams gone black with age. Water washed around his knees, warmer here, fed by a hidden current. Vines dangled from the beams like green ropes, their roots lost somewhere above. And everywhere, scattered like someone had opened the earth's pockets, were chests. Not cheap plastic storage bins. Real chests, massive, iron-banded trunks, some half-rotted open, some still shut, all glowing where the light struck them. Coins spilled out of one, tumbling over each other in shimmering piles. Gold or something that wanted to be gold. Old clay jars lined one wall, their lids sealed with wax. A rusted lantern hung from a nail, its glass broken, as if someone had once tried to light this place and given up. For a long second, he just stood there, breath caught. He'd spent years playing men who walked into rooms like this without blinking, men who treated danger and treasure as props. But now the weight of it pressed on him. All the films, all the red carpets, all the headlines about his net worth. And under his own house, something existed that would have changed the math for almost anyone on the planet. He moved closer to the nearest open trunk. The coins inside weren't movie props. They were worn at the edges, faces rubbed soft by hands and time. Some were stamped with old emblems he didn't recognize, some with dates so faded they were just ghosts of numbers. Between them lay duller shapes, rings, brooches, lockets with no owners. "This is insane," he whispered, the sound swallowed by the chamber. Water rippled behind him. He turned quickly, sweeping the flashlight across the surface. For a moment he saw only floating debris and his own reflection, stretched thin by the movement. Then his beam caught two yellow points hovering just above the waterline, still and patient. Eyes. They blinked once, then slid sideways, attached to the broad, scaled head of something that had no right being this far under a Lowe's angel's home. The gator, or crocodile, he couldn't tell, and it hardly mattered, floated there, body almost fully submerged, drifting between him and the narrow exit back to the basement. He swallowed, forcing his breathing to stay slow. The animal didn't lunge. It watched, ancient and unreadable, as if trying to decide whether he was threat or prey or neither. Behind it, in the darkest corner, something long and muscular shifted across a half-submerged crate, the lazy coil unmistakable. "Great," he murmured under his breath. "They invited the whole family." "You're not on set, there is no stunt team. Move smart." He kept the flashlight trained on the gator's eyes, backing toward a stack of crates along the right-hand wall, taking care not to splash more than he had to. Every motion felt like it mattered. His body knew this rhythm from countless training days. Control your steps, control your breathing, respect the danger. The difference now was that if he misjudged, there was no director to yell cut. His boot brushed against something solid under the surface. He glanced down. A thick wooden box jutted up from the water, lids sealed and wrapped in oilcloth. On the side, just above the tide line, a faded name had been burned into the wood. BNNATT. He didn't recognize it. Not a previous owner he'd heard of, not a friend. But right beside the name, nailed high where the water hadn't reached, was a metal tin with a screw-on lid. It looked newer than the rest. He grabbed it, fingers slick and twisted. The lid came free with a stubborn squeak. Inside, wrapped tight in plastic, was a notebook. He tucked himself onto the crate, keeping one shoulder against the wall, one eye on the gator as he slid the notebook out. The plastic crinkled as he peeled it back. On the cover, in shaky blue ink, someone had written, "If you found this, you were never meant to find it alone." He opened to the first page. The handwriting inside leaned hard to the right, the scrawl of someone who'd spent more time with tools than pens. 1959. My name is Arthur Bennett. If this place is open, either the hill finally gave way or you were desperate enough to come looking. Either way, I'm sorry. This room ruined my life. The storm thundered somewhere high above his head. The gator drifted a little closer, eyes half-lidded, hypnotic. Keanu kept reading. I came back from the war with more ghosts than friends. I did stunt work, odd jobs, anything to outrun what I carried. One day I took a job guarding a shipment nobody would talk about. We ended up here under this hill with crates like the ones you're looking at. I didn't steal them. I didn't have to. The man who owned them died 3 days later without naming an heir. Lawyers fought. The crates sat. The world forgot. I didn't. This gold could have bought me everything. Instead, it cost me everyone. My wife left when she realized I loved what I could do with this money more than I loved the man I was without it. My son stopped calling. I told myself I'd use it for good one day, but the more I waited, the heavier it got. So I sealed it here behind concrete and lies, and I told myself that was punishment enough. If you're reading this, it means the world chose you to decide what it never trusted me to handle. Don't make my mistake. Don't keep it for yourself. Don't let it rot under your feet. Use it for somebody else or walk away and never come back. There's always a price to carrying this much. Keanu's throat tightened. He thought of all the times reporters had asked him about his money, about the memes and the stories of him giving away so much of what he made. They called it generosity. To him, it had always felt like survival. Money never brought back the people he'd lost. It only gave him chances to ease someone else's pain so he wouldn't drown in his own. Here, in a hidden room no one believed existed, a stranger's regret echoed his private fear. That success could turn into a cage if you hugged it too close. The notebook pages fluttered in a wind that shouldn't have existed down here. He looked up. The gator had closed half the distance between them, slow and silent, wake rippling from its sides. Behind it, the coiled shape on the crate unrolled, an enormous snake easing its weight into the water, moving with eerie grace. He snapped the notebook shut, heart punching at his ribs. Upstairs, Luca and Maya were alone in a flooding house. Down here, a secret older than his fame and more dangerous than any prop weapon was waiting for him to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. A crash echoed from above. A sharp, splintering boom, followed by a scream that sliced through the floor and straight into his chest. Luca, Maya's voice high and panicked. Keanu lurched to his feet, the notebook clutched in one hand, flashlight in the other. The gator angled its head toward him, as if finally making up its mind. He didn't have time to think. He had treasure behind him, creatures in front of him, and a family upstairs who had just cried out in real fear. He had one heartbeat to choose which way to move.